I think this is true for a lot of entrepreneurs. If you're chasing the latest trend and you start seeing all these news articles and everybody's like, you should get into this industry, it's probably too late. It's already has too much hype. There's already tons of money probably flowing in. It's too late. You really need to find the industries and the opportunities before they hit, before they take off. And so sometimes that means getting into businesses that aren't cool, what everybody is telling you to get into. But if you can find the right one, you can see that there's opportunity there before others see it. That's when you can have the opportunity to build something great. We're very blessed. That's what we were able to do with Selkirk. We were able to get in before pickleball was cool, build something great. Whereas now it's such a tough industry to break into, especially from the paddle side. There's over 500 paddle brands now. There's a lot more involved with going to market, with engineering and development and IP and managing patents. So it's definitely better to jump in before it takes off.
Well, first of all, Mike, thank you for joining us today. Very excited for you to be here.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
So, people who know what company you've built already are probably pretty excited about this. But for some of the audience who maybe aren't familiar with the name, can you tell us a little bit about the company you founded and what you've worked on?
For sure. So the company we're working on right now is Selkirk, and so the name Selkirk actually comes from a mountain range in Canada that comes down into Idaho. And the reason we chose that name was because people haven't really heard of it before. We wanted to be able to apply our own meaning to our company and our brand. But before that, my brother and I actually started a business in airsoft when I was 15 and he was 17, and it was in sporting goods. We actually we were homeschooled, and so our dad wanted us to start a business as a homeschool project. And so we were into airsoft at the time, and we started looking around and started drop shipping. It was pretty simple, but after a little while, we realized that we weren't actually making any money. That what your costs are, what you sell it for, you don't actually make a profit in between. There's a lot of overhead and costs. So we started to import from China parts directly. We essentially stumbled across Alibaba. We saw, hey, this looks like a good place to source, and we started buying it directly and selling it direct to consumer. So this was around 2008, 2010. We didn't even know direct to consumer was this strategy that you could apply. We were just having fun and figuring things out as we went. And so that was the first business we were in, and that was successful. We just kept, every dollar we made, we put back into the company and kept growing it. But a few years into that, we started playing pickleball at our local Croc Center, and we went there one day with our dad. We were playing basketball, and there's this weird game that was set up that we hadn't seen before. And that someone was asked us like, "Hey, do you want to join?" As we started playing, just hitting the ball around, we had no clue what we were doing. We didn't even know what the rules were. But my dad actually, he was a fireman previously, and so he had played at the fire station, so he remembered a little bit about it. And then from there, we got addicted to it. We started playing it. A couple months later, somebody came by that actually knew the rules and showed us the right way to play, and we loved it. And that at the Croc Center, the game kept growing. People would see it from the gym or playing basketball and want to join. To where one point for two courts, we had 30 people waiting just to get on the court. And so we kind of knew it was a great sport. It was really fun. It was growing. There's a lot of opportunity there, and we thought we wanted to try to jump in. So initially, because we were importers, we thought, hey, let's go to Alibaba. Let's see if we could find some product. And we did that. We received some samples, and we realized, oh, this stuff is not good. And then we figured we had to make it in the U.S. So from the very beginning, our first paddles were made in the USA, and that's something even still to this day. We make products in the USA or assemble it, and we also source from China and elsewhere. And so we were players for a little while, and we started pickleball, and with myself, my brother, and our dad, who started with the production. So he was recently retired from the fire department, and my brother's father-in-law, who was a graphic designer, and so he did the original logo. And as we were doing that, it was doing well. We really enjoyed it. We just love the industry. Pickleball is such a fun sport. It's everybody's community. So everybody's friends. It's a very social game. It's interesting. Sometimes people will complain about the noise that pickleball generates. What they don't realize is that noise often isn't just the sound of the paddle. It's actually the sound of people bantering and having fun on the court. And so it was an industry we really wanted to be in. And we ended up, my brother and I sold our prior company to one of our biggest customers so that we could focus full time on pickleball on Selkirk. And it's been exploding ever since. When we first started the brand, there were only a handful of other companies. It was very mom and pop. It wasn't very professional, and that's one of the reasons we jumped in. We thought we could professionalize it. We could build a real sporting goods company. We could focus on technology, building better product, and it's exploded since then and turned into a real sport, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear the story of kind of being on the cutting edge of a sport and really a movement among a bunch of different people, and seeing that grow and having the company kind of ride that wave.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So at the time that we started pickleball, I mean, we were very young, and everybody was like, "What are you doing with your life? Like this doesn't make sense. I've never heard of this sport. Does it have something to do with pickles?" Right? Nobody knew what was going on. And so it was not a popular sport. It was not a cool sport to enter into. And we kind of like that actually. In general, we tend to be contrarians. And I think this is true for a lot of entrepreneurs. If you're chasing the latest trend and you start seeing all these news articles and everybody's like you should get into this industry, it's probably too late. It's already has too much hype. There's already tons of money probably flowing in. It's too late. You really need to find the industries and the opportunities before they hit, before they take off. And so sometimes that means getting into businesses that aren't cool, that aren't um, what everybody is telling you to get into. But if you can find the right one, you can see that there's opportunity there before others see it. That's when you can have the opportunity to build something great. And so that we're very blessed. That's what we were able to do with Selkirk. We were able to get in before pickleball was cool, build something great. Whereas now it's such a tough industry to break into, especially from the paddle side. There's over 500 paddle brands now. There's a lot more involved with going to market, with engineering and development and IP and managing patents. So it's definitely better to jump in before it takes off.
Yeah, I want to get into what it takes to run a big business in this space here in a minute, but I'm curious first. What do you see as the future of pickleball in this industry? Are you seeing the growth rate starting to plateau, or is it still up and to the right?
Pickleball is definitely still growing over the last year, and you can see some of this data just by searching Google Trends. It is starting to flatten a little bit in the U.S. Partly because it's such a high participation sport already. At some point, it has to start plateauing. That being said, we're seeing growth accelerate internationally, especially in Southeast Asia. So there's still a lot of growth opportunity within the sport. Also, there's in 2021 and 2022 when interest rates were low, there was a lot of cheap money floating around. Pickleball was at the peak of its hype cycle, and so lots of money flooded in a variety of ways. That's when paddle brands exploded, and just the number of brands out there, and also a lot of investment into facilities. So there's estimates that around 700 new pickleball facilities are opening up just this year, which is going to be great for the growth of the game because everybody's going to be focusing on there's that infrastructure there. There's places to play. Everybody's going to be focusing on training, getting new people involved in the game. So there's still a lot of growth opportunity, but most of that growth over the next 5 years is probably going to come internationally.
That's very interesting. I'm curious on the stickiness of the customer, or if you can speak to the behavior of the customer, and if you have somebody who buys products from you, do they come back, or what's the nature compared to maybe other industries that are similar?
This is one of the reasons we really fell in love with the sport from a business perspective is because it is a very sticky sport. One of the words everybody uses about pickleball when they first try it is that it's addicting. And actually that's more or less how we came up with our slogan, which is we are pickleball. And our mission statement is to fuel the pickleball obsession found inside every player. So we know once you get started, you become addicted, you become obsessed, and it's our goal is to fuel that. And so we fuel it with great product, with great content. Even now we're getting more into apps and technology. So it's a very sticky sport compared to others. One stat that I think highlights this, we often ask customers what other sports did they do? Because usually if someone's playing in a sport, especially as an adult, maybe they played it as kids or they're just a sports person in general. And we see a lot of that in pickleball. But I believe last time we checked, around 25% of the people, 20 to 25% of the people really were not serious sports players. They didn't play another sport, or they played recreationally in school, and this is the first sport they've fallen in love with. So that just shows you that we have something special in pickleball, and that's where we believe it could be one of the highest participation sports in the world.
That rings true to kind of this antidote that I came across personally when I was researching this, which is I was talking to people in my life who play pickleball, and I have a friend of mine who runs big marathons, and he plays pickleball, and I also have my mom who doesn't do that, and she plays pickleball, and it seems like it's a sport that's accessible to a larger group of people, and I'm wondering if that's true or if that's what you guys are seeing in the data.
100% that's the case. It's a very, and a lot of this is it's just such an easy sport to get going. It's easy to get going, but it's hard to master. So you can come in, play pickleball, and have fun the first time you're doing it. So we actually provide free lessons at our local area, and people can get in there, and in the first lesson they understand the game. They can have fun. They can play with their friends, and it's also a very equalizing sport. So some sports like tennis, for example, you really need to play with someone at your level to enjoy it. With pickleball, it you can have people of various levels and you're still going to have fun. And actually, you see that from the very beginning of the founding of the sport. So pickleball was founded in 1965 on Bainbridge Island by dads who wanted to create this sport they could play with their kids. And so they essentially used the equipment they had at the time, and that was a racquetball court and ping pong paddles and a wiffle ball. And so they started hitting around the wiffle ball with the ping pong paddles. They eventually decided, hey, let's lower the racquetball net to where it's more like a tennis net. And then eventually they just had fun. And eventually someone cut out um, plywood into the shape of what's very similar to a pickleball paddle nowadays, and the sport evolved from there. They had the kitchen line, which is the line that's in racquetball. They eventually moved it a little bit back because they wanted it to be a little bit harder to do slams. But the dimensions of a pickleball court are very similar to a racquetball court. The equipment is essentially an oversized ping pong paddle with a lot more technology in it nowadays. And so what you saw was dads playing with their kids, and even today you'll see tournaments where a grandparent is playing with their grandkid and having a blast. There's very few sports, I can't name one off the top of my head, that you can do that with. So it's a multi generational sport. Um, Early on, pickleball was known as being a senior sport because it blew up in 2014, especially in senior communities, partly because it was a very easy sport. It was an easier sport than tennis, easier than golf in some ways. But those same attributes really make it a great sport for all ages. And so, since when we founded the company, the primary demographic and the average demographic has been falling every year to where now some people actually consider it a young person sport, which is kind of interesting when I hear people describe it that way because it's so different from where we started.
Yeah, that's interesting to say because the if I were to describe from the circles I'm in and the buzz in Austin, which is where I'm based, it definitely seems like it's a young sport. Like there's people going out and playing on the weekends, and there's an energy around it. It seems like something that's up and coming.
It is for sure. When we first got into the sport, I was early 20s and my brother as well. And we were grinding it out. We were going to tournaments with our suitcases of paddles. And we were always pretty much always the youngest person there by a few decades. And so people would look at us, wonder what we were doing there. But again, every year it's fallen. And at this point, it is very much a young person sport. Interesting from a media standpoint, even, it's really one of the first major sports that's grown up in the digital age. And so you see this in a lot of people's marketing. It tends to be very, very digitally focused. Influencers have a major impact within the sport. They have a lot more traction than even in some other sports. So it's kind of neat from a media perspective, seeing that younger influence and seeing a sport grow up in this new age.
That's great. So, okay, that brings up something I actually really wanted to ask you about, which is when you think about how do you target a demographic that is across different ages and different groups and in cities all across the US, how do you think about building that brand and that messaging to be compelling to that wide group of people?
That's a good question. So we have internally brand personas, and those personas cover a variety of whether it's age groups or skill levels or reasons they're in the sport, what kind of products they look for. So we have some brand personas that are focused on gearheads that really want all those technical details. We have some brand personas that are people more just looking for rec play. We have brand personas for people that are advanced players versus lower players. So we do try to tailor messaging to those different categories. And again, pickleball is very diverse. There's a very wide variety of people in this sport. And so it does make it more challenging because you have to communicate to them in different ways. But at the same time, there's also a lot of familiarity. Everybody loves pickleball, right? Our slogan is "We are pickleball." We're family owned. We're only focused on pickleball. That resonates with a wide variety of individuals. Our lifetime warranty, working on innovative products. There's certain things that span the gap, and then there's certain things that we really need to tailor to specific people. And then, of course, in your targeting, you can make sure the message is tailored to the demographic you're targeting. And digital advertising obviously allows you to do that much more effectively than traditional advertising.
Do you find that you spend a large portion educating people about pickleball in the first place, or is it the marketing spends mostly focused on people who are already aware of pickleball and they're choosing you guys over competitors?
We do have a funnel. In general, most of our spend is focused on people that are already familiar with pickleball. We occasionally run tests where we target people that are familiar with pickleball and we target people that are a bit more tangential. And in the past, the pickleball specific audiences performed way better than the non pickleball audiences, people that are newer to the sport. That being said, as pickleball is getting a wider reach, we're starting to see that shift a little bit, and we're seeing certain opportunities with those non pickleball specific audiences.
That's interesting. So you're starting to see those curves kind of hit that peak where maybe you're saturating certain parts of the market with certain concepts in terms of messaging.
And going back to all the different brands in the space, we have to be contrarians when we think about our marketing. So in many ways, the best opportunities, the best ROI we've received from our marketing efforts are when we're doing things that our competitors aren't. So early on in pickleball, when it was more of a mom and pop shops and there weren't really professional brands in the space, nobody was doing digital very well. So was 2015 around. And so we were the first ones to bring digital, to bring video content, to start doing paid advertising. And it gave us a huge leg up compared to our competitors. But eventually they figured that out, especially as money comes in, as private equity comes in, they know the traditional playbooks like that. And so they start pouring money into those digital advertising channels. So at this point, it's a little bit more saturated. CPMs have gone up a lot. They're a bit higher compared to even some other industries. And so we have to find new opportunities. One of those new opportunities in 2020 was actually influencers. So at that time, nobody was sponsoring influencers within pickleball. So maybe you call them micro influencers. We did a whole strategy where we sponsored all the influencers in the space, essentially, because we were able to get reasonable deals, especially better deals compared to the other opportunities that were saturated. And so now we're seeing after as those contracts start expiring that, okay, now people are realizing this is a smart strategy. It's a little bit more competitive, a little bit more saturated. And so we have to move on to the next strategy to be our focus.
And so that's interesting. So you have this challenge of being saturated within your traditional media market, something that was able to allow you to grow to quite a large company, and then you hit this influencer opportunity, which now seems as if it's maybe slipping away a little bit in terms of other people are catching on, and so it's becoming more competitive. Are there certain things you guys are looking at today that you're excited about, or that you think considering within the realm of opportunities?
Definitely. So a couple. One opportunity that was very underutilized for a couple years was pro athletes. So we invested heavily in pro athletes, and we really took a Nike model, which was if you're spending $1 on a pro athlete, you have to spend one, two, $3 to actually promote them. So previously, most of our competitors they would also spend on pro athletes, but they did very little to leverage them in paid ads or content. So when we started um, sponsoring some of the top players in the game, we did that while also hiring more videographers and people to produce content with those pros, paid media specialists to promote them. And it really was a full strategy to where we didn't even necessarily need all the top players. We just needed to promote them better. And so that worked out very well. But now we're starting to see some of the viewership dropping off. So we're having to switch to, instead of focusing on just the top players, you always need a few. Sometimes people will ask like, hey, what should be our pro player strategy if they're in a sport like lacrosse? And we always recommend you need to try to get at least one person with a good personality, good performance, good potential. And then after that, you want to focus on the up and comers. So where you want to avoid is the people that are just barely about breaking into the top level. They want to get paid very similar to the top guy because they feel like they're close to him, even though in reality their reach and their popularity is order of magnitude less. And so we see you want one guy and gal ideally at the top of their game that you leverage in all of your marketing and show that you have those top players, and then you want to focus on the up and comers. And so a big part of our strategy is our Emergent Pro program, where we're finding people as they're first getting into the sport. We're providing them with the best gear we can. We're giving them help to go to these tournaments, even hiring coaches to train them and give them the best chance at succeeding at pro pickleball. And in addition to the pro side, switching that to focus more on emerging pros, another opportunity is actually going back to some very traditional media, such as TV advertising, network TV advertising, and again, this is something that is not as much, it isn't on trend, it isn't as much hype for. It's still very digitally focused in the marketing world, but we actually see a lot of opportunity with traditional TV because no one else is focusing on it. The CPMs are very low, and going back to the point about we're starting to see pickleball have that broader reach. So the TV advertising is actually having a brand impact for us, and it's something where it's a blue ocean.
You described both TV and this program where you're working with athletes, both kind of more advanced athletes and otherwise. I'm curious how you think about attribution. Has that been a challenge? And as you've evolved to broader strategies, have you had to evolve the way you think about attributing $1 for the return on investment?
Yes, attribution for sports companies is very difficult. So obviously, when you're doing digital advertising, it's a lot easier to do attribution. But when you're talking about sponsoring pros, there's very little data out there. There's very little um, that helps you to make those decisions and understand where the ROI is at. And part of the challenge of pickleball is everybody is very overpaid compared to other sports in terms of the amount of impressions they're getting. So I forget the last time we did this comparison, but we compared what pickleball pros are getting paid from sponsors versus tennis pros. And if you equal it out based on CPMs, they're about 10x overpaid. And so it's great for the athletes. Pickleball is the easiest sport for an athlete to get into and succeed and make a living at. Most other sports you have to grind for 10 years and then you're just hoping and praying that can make a living from it. In pickleball, you can give it a shot for a year, and if you're good, start making a living. So it's great. It's great for the pros. It's great for the athletes. But for us, we have to be very careful to see if we're getting an ROI. And in general, we think now that in many cases there is an ROI for these top athletes.
Switching over a little bit to the customer side. So we've talked about awareness and they're starting to understand your brand and they're ready to make their first purchase. Do you see patterns in terms of what people are buying right off the bat versus what they might come back to buy when, because you have a whole variety of different products you guys sell around pickleball?
We see when someone first gets into pickleball, they just want to have fun. They want to get going. They tend to buy recreational products, a little bit lower price point, and then typically about 6 months later, they're addicted. They want to get better, and one of the ways to get better is to get a higher performance product. And usually at that 6 month mark, you're starting to get a feel for paddles. You sort of know like, hey, I need to work on my soft game, or I want more power and hit my drives harder. And so then they'll upgrade to higher performance products. And so something our brand did that's fairly unique from the beginning was we introduced, actually not from the beginning, around halfway through, we realized there was a need for lower price products. But Selkirk was a premium brand and it was made in the USA. And so we had this conundrum. We knew we had to go to China to make lower price products that still performed well, but we were able to be competitive in the marketplace. But we also didn't want to put the Selkirk S on it. We didn't want it to be a full Selkirk brand, but we wanted to leverage the brand equity still. And so essentially, we started a new brand called SLK by Selkirk. And so it was a separate brand, a little bit different design pattern to it. But it still was associated with Selkirk. We could still sell through all of our same distribution channels, and we were backing it with our design R&D quality control. And so we introduced lower price products under the SLK brand and protected the premium nature of our Selkirk brand. And so what our strategy is to let people get introduced to pickleball, introduced to our brand through SLK. We sell it through Costco, Dick's Sporting Goods, Walmart, Target. And then once they become addicted to the sport, they love the sport, they want to keep improving, it's an easy pathway into the Selkirk brand.
It's interesting that right off from the beginning with your original brand, you focused on making it both premium and American made. And I guess you could say one and the same. But I'm curious. I mean, there must have been pressure early on for that to decide whether or not to do that, especially when you're looking at the cost of the product. I don't know. I'm asking. I guess
Yeah.
was there pressure, and if there was, how did you guys navigate that? Were there ever times when you're like, hey, you know what, it would be easier to make this overseas?
Oh, definitely, definitely. So that's been a challenge and something that we've had to navigate and shift from throughout the years. So early on, made in the USA was the standard within the industry because everybody knew if it was made in China, it was going to fall apart. It was not going to perform well. And so we were very committed to making made in the USA products. But over time, we saw the need for this lower price products. We were manufacturing some lower price products in the USA. It was just very, very difficult, very costly. And so switching to a made in China product was a big deal. Now, at that time when we made that switch, China was getting better, and obviously they're very good at manufacturing, and they've gotten a lot better at manufacturing over the last decade. And so even with our Selkirk Sport brand, we've had to shift where some products are made in the USA, sourced with USA materials. Some products are assembled with materials sourced both domestically and internationally. So we've had to shift some of our manufacturing over to China as well. That being said, as we're growing an engineering team, our product team, we're getting better at manufacturing. We don't necessarily want to give some of our best technology to China. So we're working on reindustrializing, bringing more manufacturing back into the USA. There's certain technologies like our InfiniGrid, which is a breakthrough that allows you to have a paddle with high spin for a long period of time. That's something that, as we apply it across our Selkirk product line, will always be done in the USA. It's expensive and time consuming, but we really want to keep that to be a USA technology and trade secret.
And as you think about this moment in time, have you seen the benefits of you guys having a large focus on the USA given the tariffs? And I'm wondering if that's something that's benefit you guys uniquely, or it's something that a lot of our other companies are primarily based in the USA. Is my question.
Yeah, the vast majority of our competitors are all made in China
Mhm.
products, and so the fact that we have diversity definitely puts us in a much better position. Now we are still affected by the tariffs, whether it's because of SLK, which are made in China, or some of our assembled products, which have components from China that are tariffed. But we're definitely in a much better position. We're able to navigate it more quickly. Also, because I mean, I believe we have some of the best engineering talent, some of the best manufacturing capability. We're a company that can move away from China faster than anyone else. So there's obviously a lot of uncertainty, a lot of disruption, but in most situations when there's disruption, the best companies, the most agile companies come out on top, and we think we'll be that company. Similar to the '08 financial crisis, um, it crushed the banks. It was a banking financial crisis. It crushed the banks, but JP Morgan came out on top and became a behemoth. So that's how we're positioning ourselves, and that's what we're hoping for.
Well, I think that you guys are well positioned for that, so I'm excited to see where it goes. When you guys think about this product and its seasonality, how does that affect how you guys are spending money across the different areas that you guys are investing in right now, particularly when it comes to marketing?
Yeah. So it's in terms of seasonality, it's interesting. Seasonality has changed the last 2 years, and it's something we're having to adjust for. So it used to be Q4 was by far the biggest season for two reasons. One was Christmas, and two was that's when it was opening up in the southern states, such as Arizona, Florida, Texas. And so the last 2 years, pickleball has really transitioned from those southern states to be very popular in northern states as well. And so Q2 and Q3 are actually becoming a much stronger season. And so it is things that we're having to adjust for. So we used to launch products around September, October for Q4, and now we're really looking to adjust our cycle to begin new product launches in Q2.
So it sounds like you guys are shifting with it, and I guess how do you guys get ahead of that? Like, do you guys build out a when I'm thinking about the teams and how you run your marketing team, I'm curious how you think about those meetings that you guys have and those metrics that you look at, so you make sure you're always ahead of the curve.
So, I mean, in seasonality, I would say we're a little bit behind the curve actually,
Right.
because it's a surprising, somewhat surprising change that we've noticed. But yeah, certainly, I think with in terms of metrics, you need to have good data, and you also need to have your ears to the ground. So, we really believe in both qualitative and quantitative metrics. But one of my favorite stories in business is Jeff Bezos talking about his team meeting, and he brought up some anecdotes about how their customer service was answering phone calls slowly, that people were on hold for a while, and the person responsible for that function said, "Oh no, look at these statistics, we're doing great." And so what he did was he just called the Amazon customer service line, and he was on hold for 30 minutes. And it's just sort of like, okay, it doesn't really matter what our stats are saying. If this is what's happening, there's a problem, and we need to double check our stats. So we have something we apply across the company. We call them reality checks. It's essentially derived from Gemba, which is a Toyota production system tool. And what Gemba says is you need to go to the factory floor. You can't make decisions in an ivory tower as management saying, "Hey, the production floor should make these changes. Just start doing this." Like you don't really know. And if there's a problem, I mean, you don't go to a meeting room and talk about it. You go to where the problem is, actually observe it and see it. And so that's something we do with a lot of things. We do it with process analysis. We're like, "Hey, there's something's broken here. We're not going to sit in a meeting room and talk about it. We're going to go and observe it being done and fix it on the factory floor or with the individual that's responsible for it." And I think you could do a similar thing with customers, and we actually do. So our R&D team, for example, every single person on the R&D team is responsible for talking to a real customer every week. So we set up these meetings where someone that's bought one of our products, we say, "Hey, we'll give you a gift card, and we just want you to meet with one of our R&D people." The customer obviously loves it because they're actually being part of the process. Their feedback is being heard by people that can actually make changes, and I think it's great for the R&D and the engineering team because they get that connection to the customer. It can be easy to get to lose connection, to get disconnected. I think these are great things for marketing teams to do. It's like, you can look at your case studies and your stats all day long, and those are important, and you want to make sure you're staying on top of that. But in the end, you have to actually go and do a reality check and talk to real people and make sure the anecdotes are lining up with your data.
Online there's a lot of talk about how your company culture is very positive. People love it, both inside the company and people who are buying the product, so customers and employees. Uh, what do you think it takes to be a leader in a place where you have customers that love what it takes, and you also have employees that love working there? I mean, you gave me some details, but I'm just curious around the mindset of what you think through every day to be able to create that environment.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's interesting. I've never, because I'm very involved in the hiring. I used to interview and make decisions on everybody now on some key positions and just managers, but I'm still very involved. But I've never asked or tried to analyze someone from a culture standpoint. I think when you start being like, are they a good culture fit? Are they fun? Whatever that looks like that's like you don't know the person when you're interviewing them. You don't know what they're going to be like. You don't know if they're going to bring drama or not. And so really, I think how you're able to maintain a drama-free culture and a high quality culture in your company is you just want to find people that care about what they do and are good employees, are smart, and people that are willing to work with others. If you're good at what you do and you want to do a good job, then you'll work with someone that can help you. If you bring in people that are very agenda focused, um, just want to do things and take credit, that's when you start having problems. So I think in a lot of our interviewing, we're very focused on just finding high quality people that perform at a high level. When you put those people in a room, they're gonna get along.
Mm. And as you guys have scaled, I mean, I don't know how many employees you guys have now, but if I understand correctly, it's north of 100. Is that right?
But depending on how you measure employees and contractors, but it's around 200.
Around 200, right? And so things have to change at a certain point when you're bringing those people in.
Mhm.
Have you seen? And I know you just said that like you don't really focus on hiring for culture, but culture still exists, even if your culture is.
Oh, it's super important. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what are the things you can do when you're at that scale? When you have 200 so employees and contractors, are there moments in time where you bring people together to think about, what the company stands for? How do you How do you create that energy?
For sure. Yeah. So one of the core things about our company is we say we're mission focused, and so going back to hiring, I do think it is hiring for culture when you find people that's mission focused, that they're focused on doing a good job, fulfilling a mission, not necessarily on their own personal agenda, right? And so everything we do as a company is very mission focused. If we have a project, you have to define what the mission is. If you're running a process, we want you to define what the process is, what's your job description, what's the mission for what you do. And so being very mission focused is critical. And something we do internally is what we call build sessions. And so whenever we're creating something, we hold what we call a build session, and it's kind of like a brainstorm but on steroids. So we bring everybody together and we say, look, we're not looking for something perfect. We're not looking for someone to come and bring the presentation. We want to just get everybody in a room that is related to this, and we're actually going to build it. And so a brainstorm session, it might last for an hour, and you might put a bunch of details on paper. A build session might last an entire day, and by the end of it, you actually have a knocked out plan. You actually have real results. So we did this, for example. We do this a lot with technology. We build custom tools in house. And so we'll have a build session where we bring in a business user, we bring in the developers, and we say, by the end of the day, you need an end-to-end use case and an actual working prototype. And by the end of the day, they have it. And then you're able to build on top of that. And that's something that if you had a normal process where one team brainstormed and then you went back and you worked for a few weeks and you came back and showed your work and it's not actually what everybody thought it should be, like that process does not work. Getting everybody in the room and actually doing things together does work. And so we run build sessions with marketing. And for example, we did our pro shop. It's a first brand store in the pickleball space, and we brought in marketing, operations, and everybody, and we just started designing everything out for the paddle wall. We actually, we're like, hey, let's start building this out. So we went into the core. We started using cardboard boxes, showing what everything should be. And by the end of it, it's a long session, it's a long day, but by the end of it, you have something real that you can run with. Um, so we think build sessions are really important, and we also have a matrix organization. So we really try to encourage people to collaborate. And I think when you see companies that have poor cultures, often what the problem is one function is very focused on just their thing, and they could care less about what everybody else does. And so we're very careful to not have bonus structures that encourage that kind of behavior. And in many cases, we'll have individuals that have a direct report and an indirect report to two very different functions. Maybe it's one person's reporting to marketing, another person's reporting to operations. Or for our developers, for example, we actually take developers and embed them in departments. So if a developer is supposed to be helping the operations team, or the wholesale, for an example would be our wholesale team, helping the wholesale team, they actually get embedded. They work for that department. They learn the processes, and now they're building a custom CRM for that department that works exactly as they need it. So try to break down those silos and make it to where people are encouraged to collaborate together and run processes together that cross functions is really critical. And when you have people that want to fulfill the mission, they will work well together.
That brings up something that I wanted to discuss with you too, which is, when I talk to companies that are in this stage, one pattern that I've noticed is that they'll often say that there's friction in the C-suite. One example might be like the CMO and the CFO, or whoever's heading the marketing spend and whoever's heading the finance spend, and thinking about, okay, how can we figure out what the right amount of money is to go to the right place? So I'm curious, even at that higher level, so the C-suite, how do you guys make sure that the teams work together well, and what are some of the learnings that you've had in growing a team that says so?
For sure. So in some ways, it goes back to some of the things we already mentioned about doing build sessions. We're also very agile, so we try to encourage everyone, like, don't wait till something's perfect. Bring it while it's a work in progress, so we can all talk about it and work on it together. Um, and in the C-suite in particular, we find that the some of the best people do not have a lot of corporate experience, don't come from a high level of corporate background. And so actually, this is something in terms of being a growing company, we were very careful with, and we saw from experience, we saw from talking with people, we even saw from some examples of hires we did. But we were very careful to find people that are willing to do things in a new way. So generally speaking, when you make a transition from a small business to a medium-sized business, there's two ways for things to go typically. One way is that you don't care about process and you just keep doing things the way you've always done it, and then things devolve into chaos. The other way, which is probably better but still has its issues, is you become a best practices company. And so what we see a lot of companies do is they start out small, they do some things in unique ways. They have that small company vibe. They're very agile, very iterative. But then as they become a medium-sized company, they bring in an executive suite with a lot of experience, but they come in and they just start doing things how they did at their last company. And that's usually what people mean by best practices. Like, let's talk to someone who's done this before and do it the exact same way. And that's something where we really fought against. We knew was going to be an issue as we transitioned to a medium-sized company, and we wrote a document that says strategic practices. And that's what we're trying to build, strategic practices. It's a roadmap for how we build our company. And so as we started hiring our executive suite and key management, we shared this doc ahead of time and we said, look, this is how we're going to build our company. This is what we're doing. And essentially what that says is you can start with a best practice. You do want to learn as much as you can about how things work, but then you simplify it as much as you can. Do the most basic process you can and iterate on top of it to make it better over time. And you build those in context. So we don't want to run how tennis companies run. Actually, the some of the best things we do, it's when we diverge from best practices, and we've adopted this unique approach to doing things. I mean, an example is one of our best programs is our emerging pros program. If you went and hired someone with experience on how to manage athletes, they would do it completely different than us. They would tend to have a very small team. They would have high interactions, high level of service, whereas we run it more like an operations team and a customer support. And so we're able to scale it way faster than everyone else does. And so by bringing in that operational expertise to what is typically more of a marketing expertise, we're able to get better results. And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes we'll take things like our warranty claim process and we'll turn it into an amazing, like we have the best warranty claim process I've ever seen. It's extremely easy, very automated. Someone sends in a request. There's a form. We have technology behind the scenes, in some cases AI powered, that makes decisions, gets them out the paddle right away with a prepaid return label. And we make certain experiences extremely easy. And if you brought in an operational person to run that, they would do it completely different. But the fact that we care about the marketing side and the experience side makes it a really great process. So I see this often in many meetings that I do. I see this a lot in when we'll go into meetings. I might go into a meeting with the marketing team and they have certain priorities that they feel like operations isn't prioritizing. And then right after that, I might, and often what I'll do is I'll push back and say, like, I understand these are your priorities, but you have to understand why this matters for operations. We got to make it be able to execute on it. And then right after that, I might go into an operations meeting and they're like, hey, marketing has these priorities and this is hard to do. And it's like, no, I understand, but like, let's come up with a system so that we can execute our marketing's priorities as well. So it's sort of like oftentimes it's pushing back in specific functions, but it's because trying to make the whole thing work together. And I think that's what strategic practices are. It's not just saying like, let's just copy and paste from other companies. Let's think about this strategically about our company, our context, our customers.
Great. Okay. Well, one thing that I wanted to ask you is, you've talked about how you have this culture of really focusing on have first principles, and I don't know if that's exactly how you describe it, but bringing people to the table, not bringing in these outsized influences that are going to kind of stir things up, keeping true to your internal culture. I'm curious, how do you guys apply that when you're thinking about going international, which is new markets? Like, is it you using the same playbook? Is this still a bit of a question mark? What are your thoughts around starting to explore marketing into like a global stage?
Right. Yeah. And building from first principles is exactly what we talked about. And you see a lot of some of our favorite companies do that. You look at Tesla, SpaceX, um, Nike in many ways built from first principles, what a sporting goods company should be. And so that's what we want to do. And sometimes when you're building from first principles, you are shaking things up. So we're definitely not opposed to shaking things up. We just want to make sure it's doing it for the right reasons. And you mentioned internationally. That's something that's top of mind for us right now. And so I'll share some of the secrets that we're doing for the pickleball industry, at least. So I think there's a couple of models for how to expand globally. Few models. I put them into three buckets. The first model is you try to operate from the initial market, in this case, the USA, right? So we're a USA company, and so we're just going to manage everything in the USA. We're going to sell to pro shops and retailers and have a USA sales rep manage it, and that's usually where you default. That's essentially where we've been, just because of the nature of it, and international hasn't been a big part of our business. But as international grows, the other model people tend to switch to is utilizing distributors, and so they say, hey, whatever market it is, India, Australia, Europe, they start identifying and signing up distributors, usually exclusive distributors. And that's a little bit better because now you have people with boots on the ground. They actually understand the market. They're dedicated to that market. But that comes with some challenges as well. One is if you give them free reign, they'll often not represent your brand well. They'll often have other brands that they represent, and it won't be the same as if you did it. But it's better than you trying to do it from the USA because they understand the market, they have distribution, they have the infrastructure for that new market. Um, the third option, which is essentially what we're taking and not as common, is to vertically integrate. So our mindset is we're gonna do the thing that's a little bit harder and and vertically integrate. And vertical integration is one of our key strategies we've done from the beginning. Is we'd rather do it ourselves. Manufacturing, we have in-house capabilities. R&D, we don't outsource to R&D firms. We hire engineers directly. Even attorneys, we're starting to hire them directly versus outsourcing to firms. And marketing is another great example. We don't typically use agencies. We try to hire in-house because we're able to do it more collaboratively, integrate the different functions. So same with internationally is we're going to vertically integrate, which means we're going to hire employees or contractors with boots on the ground and start building out that infrastructure internationally. So I won't go into too many details specifics about where and why, but I think that is a strategy that companies need to think about more often. It seems daunting, but once you start doing it, it's not as difficult as it seems. And if you hire some great people with boots on the ground, they'll help you navigate it. And it's something that the distributor's having to do, and you kind of have to figure out to some degree already, even if you're working with a distributor. But you can actually own the results, and you're not having to introduce a middleman that is often taking for more of your profits. And so I think this is the model that is really important for us to adopt. And what that also means is we're really encouraging and working with people to let go and let that subsidiary overseas have more autonomy and let them make some of their own decisions. What we don't want to do again is the best practices approach, which says, "Oh, here's how we do in the USA, so we're going to do it exactly like that in Southeast Asia or in Europe." We actually saw. I mean, one of the reasons we're taking this approach is we started seeing things happening overseas that didn't make any sense because it worked in the USA, but it's like no, like that's not going to work in Europe. It's a completely different market. Asia is even more different, and we got to start adopting new approaches, and also those markets are smaller. So in some cases, we're taking a playbook from our company 5 years ago and how we ran. That made sense 5 years ago for us, but doesn't make sense for us anymore in the USA. And so taking that vertically integrated approach, giving the subsidiary more autonomy to make decisions and to drive forward the business in a way that makes sense, it will give us, I think, better results. And we're already seeing that. It's pretty obvious how that's gonna give us a huge leg up compared to our competitors. And what's also great about it though is all the profits comes back to the USA. It doesn't get split with foreign distributors. Now, there's some countries that this doesn't work. It's very hard to do business in. India, for example, China is another
Mm.
example. Some companies you have to find good partners, people that are more embedded in the industry. So a lot of countries force you to do that, like China. China, if you want to start a company over there, you have to find a national to start it with. They won't let you start a company on your own. But for companies that are more free, the vertical integration approach is critical.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you. That this whole conversation has been super fascinating, and it's exciting to see where you guys are going. And hoping in the future we can do a check-in as you guys have scaled past even new horizons. So, thank you.
And yeah, thank you. It's been fun.